couple of days later, in which time I've realised that the last clip was sideways. Sorry about that. This proved tricky because it's contact adhesive, which means you lay down a blob a bit, spread it out a bit, stick the two sides together temporarily, then have them apart and dry for 15 minutes, and then you stick it back down again. And when you stick it together, once it's had the 15 minutes to begin to go tacky, it sticks immediately. So as I was doing it, I was having to squeeze those sides together. And I've known all the time that the seam is going to be a real problem. It's going to be very, very difficult to actually fix these bricks. Remember, several more layers of wash and paint are going to go on top of these, but it's going to be very difficult to actually mask that seam. And this black area is the bit that you'll never see. This will be in the inside angle of the building, which is why I've done that one first, really, to see how it would work. Those are the discs inside. Now reinforcing those with running some glue around the inside, which I'm not sure you can see because it's black on black. Contact glue does work when you just use it as non-contact glue. Just use it wet and stick the two sides together and hold them together, providing some air is getting in there somehow to let it solidify. Otherwise it just stays permanently in its liquid state as it does in the tube. It's a fiddle. This is what I like doing best. This is when I feel at home. It's working with wet materials. This is just the filler, that stuff, over PVA glue. I'm just making the ground surface more irregular, just slapping it on and then smoothing it down again afterwards, going for a fairly regular finish, but not as regular as the original flat board. Well, it's really nearly midnight and I'm ever so tired today. I've had a terribly long day making labels for an exhibition and putting an exhibition up and making posters and publicity for an exhibition in October, which is a few months ago. No, a few months away. That's how tired I am. But I had some feedback from on my Appendage of Cthulhu video from my friend Gus, and it's critical feedback, which is good. He's probably right. He often is. And he said, use the tripod more, because it's frustrating being told what you're going to do and then not seeing you do it. I'm going to take the advice on board and do it, but this is why I don't use the tripod more. It's because it's a camera tripod with a Gorilla Pod on, and the phone held on with a elastic band because the Gorilla Pod isn't strong enough to hold the phone. And a new Gorilla Pod, that's the little flexible mini tripod thing, is 40 quid on Amazon at the moment. I'm not going to buy that, so I'm struggling, and now I'm going to have to work out how to transfer this video from my camera, and it's saved in a different format, and join it on to all the other bits of video. But this is coming on. It's starting to look better. Got just the last piece to do now, and then I can begin to get an idea of actually what that tower will look like when it's finally painted. I've had 5 minutes to actually spend on it today. I've put a bit of Mod Podge on that edge. Need to go and get some sleep. Several weeks since I've been able to do anything on the project, so no progress, and that means I'm at a bit of a low point. But I have found a few hours to spend on it this week, which I've been spending on these, which are little bits of this foam core board, thinner than that, cut into 8mm squares approximately, then split down the centre with Fiskars finger knife, and left for 24 hours to soak in water so the paper doesn't peel off very easily. And then I'm sitting here listening to the archers working through these, peeling off the bits of paper, which even when they've been soaked isn't easy. And these are going to be slabs for the street bits. Fiddly, time consuming, but it is a nice summer evening, so it's rather meditative. This evening I'm gluing down my roadway, my cobblestones, and it's quite therapeutic listening to a podcast. My ground surface is actually rougher and more irregular than I wanted it, so I've had to sort of fill the worst of the potholes and take off the worst of the peaks to about there, the end of the ginnel. I'll have to do a lot more, but I'm just doing small sections at a time. Don't know if it's going to look good or terrible. I think it might look good. So that's been time consuming and fiddly, but I quite enjoyed doing it. And there's a lot more to do because I think I'm going to have that whole area cobbled. But if you ever look at castle forecourts and things where it's all cobbled, you do see paths where they've perhaps laid the path initially, and the areas around it have been dirt or grass, and then later on they've just decided to fill it all in, so there will be that sort of historical layout in there. And the sort of dip in the middle of the gunnel is what you'd get, what you see in very old pathways like that, where the centuries of weight have been pressing down on the centre, and it looks more higgledy-piggledy at the moment than it will be. It's going to it'll have coats of Mod Podge over it, and that will sort of smooth it down a little bit, filling like sort of naturally grouting some of those grooves a little bit more. The last couple of sessions, that's I think last night and today, I've been hitting new issues, which is mainly about the order in which I do things. It's meant to be essentially a timber frame building. All the hours of film I took on timber frame buildings, and we still haven't got started on that, and it's 9-10 months later. But working on this path, in order to do this path and get it tight up to the tower, I need to get the tower done and fixed and finished, realising that I need to really work on that and get that solid and fixed and into position so I can go neatly up to the base. I then realised that actually I need to think about the height of the whole thing. If I'm going to submit this to an exhibition, I've got to be able to get it in my car, and I'm not going to be able to do that at its full height. It's got to be sectional. It's got to come into at least 2 sections. So that made me realise I need to make a solid base and a good joint. So I had to cut another disc, which isn't just one of the internal discs. It's actually a disc to do a base, and stick that on. Those pins are still holding in place because I need to do a little bit of fixing and tweaking in areas like that. That can marry onto that now neatly, but I'm going to have to do some kind of socket system, which I haven't figured out yet. And while that's all been setting up and drying, I've been thinking about the finish. Now the finish, it's only meant to be the underlayer, you'll remember. It's going to be made to look less like flesh pink and black, more like stone, by putting on layers and washes. I thought I was going to put layers and washes of the same shade of pink, which is, they've reproduced this. It used to be called medium flesh, but it's now called weirdly warm beige, even though that's not a colour I'd call beige at all. I'm experimenting there with how to make it into a wash. That's with water, which I thought wouldn't adhere. That's with Mod Podge, and actually, against expectations, that turned out to be rather better in its effect, so that's why testing is always good. But then I decided to change my mind about colours, so I've been just mixing, experimenting, and in the end I've sort of settled on doing the first layer with a mixture of burnt umber and very cheapest possible supplier, and crimson. Winsor & Newton, most expensive possible supplier, but it's all paint, it mixes together. That's too brown, that's too red, that's about right. And I discovered that just by putting on and then dabbing it off, I get quite a nice thing. So I'm going to have to mix up some of that when I get to that stage. I'm going to need enough to do the whole tower without having to remix it. There's quite a lot of water in there, and getting just the right proportion of burnt umber and crimson and water to get that. It's going to be important that I don't have to mix it more than once. So I'm going to have to be generous and mix up lots and store it in a small jar or something. Okay, here's some maths to make you laugh if your maths is better than mine, though it will certainly leave you confused if your maths is not as good as mine. The tower is coming on. I've constructed the joint that's going to let me take the top off for transit. It actually connects together, it's a socket. I can't show you one-handed, but it's still a bit wibbly wobbly and rickety here. Needs the glue reinforcing. In fact, the whole tube is a little bit too soft. It's got to stand up to its own weight, so I need to do more work on that, which is mostly sort of figuring out work. And then I had to think about the roof, the cone at the top. Now that's my original picture of this early medieval tower in Ireland, and trying to measure that, and it can only be very, very rough because you've got to allow for lens distortion and the strange angle of the shot and everything. I think that's about 60 degrees. So making cones is easy, but making good cones, making a cone that you don't have a ridge on where the seam of the joint is, that's going to be tough. And I didn't know how you make a cone that's going to have an angle from the flat, from the horizontal, of 60 degrees. I just had to experiment to do that. I'm sure somebody with geometric knowledge could do better. So I just cut out a semicircle. It's not ignoring the dead zone at the bottom of the protractor. I just cut out the semicircle itself. Rolled it up into a cone. See that there's the problem you get with the seam when you start joining up, or whether or not you overlap or whatever, you get the seam. It doesn't go into a perfect smooth cone like you might get on, I don't know, a piece of wood that somebody had turned on the lathe. But this is a model of a model to help me work it out, and sticking it on the top there and sort of measuring the slope, mostly by holding a protractor in front of it, I find that that is in fact 60 degrees, or thereabouts. I don't know if it's exactly 60 degrees. Somebody with better geometry than me could work out if that's 60 degrees, why a semicircle folded round makes a cone of that angle. I don't know. There must be a mathematical proof for it if it's correct. But then I had to scale it up. So this is where my maths will amuse you. You remember that this was all based on that big cardboard tube. Never actually measured it. So I measured the diameter of my tower. Then I halved it to get the radius. Now I can remember from school that the circumference is worked out by 2 pi r, which is pi d. And then I realised, of course, that, well, I didn't even need to work out the radius. I could have gone straight to pi d, but that's what they taught us at school. Pi d then is 3.14 times 115, gives me that. If I want a circle with that circumference, no, so not if. So I want a circle with a circumference which is twice that. That's going to be the circle that I then cut in half to make the cone. So then I know that you can get to the diameter again by dividing 722 by pi, which is that. Gives me a result, rounding down a little bit because I'm going to add stone tiles which will thicken it up. And finally I get back to the radius I want of the circle that I'm going to have to try to draw on the soft flexible foam is 115. What? Right back to the start again. Now that was the duh moment, but I had to do all this maths to remind myself of how it works. And what I proved to my very, very rusty, 40 years rusty school maths brain, is that if you want to double the circumference of a circle, you double the radius. And that's because pi is a constant. The only thing that's changing, multiply up or down the radius, and the circumference will multiply up or down proportionately because it's an equation with no other variables. Well, I think anyway. So that has given me, in any case, my final radius. I need to make a circle out of the foam with a radius of that. Unfortunately, I haven't got a compass that will open that wide. I've got a little technical one, but not an old-fashioned school compass that will open as wide as 11.5 centimetres. Going to have to improvise that to make my foam circle. So to clarify, in case that sounded like complete gibberish to you, as it almost did to me, what I proved to myself was the radius of my semicircle that I'm going to make has to be the same as the diameter of my tower. In other words, the diameter of the semicircle will be twice the top of the tower, and that makes me a cone of 60 degrees or thereabouts. Quick improvised compass did the job, and there was just enough room to fit that semicircle on this bit of leftover foam. The cone of serendipity. Right, I just watched that clip before last back, and I bet that drove you bonkers. Millimetres, not millilitres. That's showing just how much of a brain ache I made for myself. It's gone. Forget about that. Now, the cone is constructed too bad a ridge, so I'm going to have to shave some off with a knife. I've done it as neatly as I can. I had to stick a disc inside to give it a little bit more strength. That's going to be stuck on there, always with the contact adhesive. Going to have to be sort of stuck on and squeezed about and held until it's in a good position. And I discovered that this leftover what is it? It's hot pressed watercolor paper is just about thick enough to make the tiles. 28mm miniature scale, which is the sort of estimated height of a 6-foot person, is actually 1 to 58 in ratio scales. So a stone slab. I took these in York recently. Where walking the York walls, there's a point where you can see a tower. It's like a water tower, and you're actually standing level with the roof of it, so you look down on it. So I've got these really great photos which show me all the sort of textures of the lichens and algae and the button moss. You can see that's how thin that is. So using thick paper to represent tiles or slates or slices of stone will be okay and to scale.